Good evening. I would like to call to order the Kaiser City Council. It is a work session on Wednesday, April 6th, 2022, and ask our city recorder to please call roll.
Councilor Herrera?
Here.
Councilor Reed?
She's excused this evening for parent-teacher conferences.
Councilor Kohler?
I am here.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Council President Smith?
She's on her way, currently absent.
Councilor Starr?
Here.
And Councilor Duran?
Here.
You got the hot mic. And it sounds like maybe I got the other one. So I'm going to back it off a little
If
bit.
you need this one, we can switch.
That's okay. Well, I'm not going to mess with the electronics because then our production people get really upset with me. Thank you all for coming out tonight on this very important topic for about the library, our beloved Kaiser Community Library, and learning about what can happen with that library going into the future. I am thrilled to pieces to see so many people out here that are interested in our Kaiser Community Library, and we are also televising this, so people who in the community who couldn't be here tonight or decided that a little bit of sunshine was really worth being outside for, they can watch this later and also comment. What we're going to do this evening is we are going to hear from the Kaiser Community Library, CCRLS, that's the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library Systems, the State Library, and then we have also a guest from the City of Dallas, and other people who can talk about kind of what is and what can come. After this discussion, then we will invite public testimony from people who are here who have questions and or comments. So that's how this is going to roll out. Sound good? All right. With that, I'd like to invite up BJ Toey from the Kaiser Community Library. And friends.
Good evening, Mayor Clark and city councilors. Thank you so much for giving your time tonight to learn more about Kaiser Community Library. We hope we can answer every question that you possibly could ask us to your satisfaction. I would like to introduce a few people. With me tonight from the Kaiser Community Library Board, John Goodyear is our treasurer, and he is the former director of CCRLS. So he knows a little bit about that, almost as much as the current director. Bill Leach is our president of Kaiser Community Library Board over here. Darcy Hanning is here from the State Library of Oregon. She is the person who is in charge of libraries becoming public libraries and can answer any questions about the legalities involved with that. And next to her is John Hunter. He is the executive director of CCRLS. We also have a couple of library directors from CCRLS with us tonight. Right behind Darcy is Mark Johnson, and he is the director at Dallas Public Library. And Christy Davis is over next to John Hunter. She is the director of the Silver Falls Library District, the only library district in CCRLS. So she has kind of a unique position among the directors there. Did I miss any library directors who are hiding? All right. I'd like to begin by reading the Oregon Revised Statutes, but not all of them.
Thank you.
We do have a time limit.
The state of Oregon recognizes that an informed citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a democratic society. Libraries constitute a cultural, informational, and educational resource essential to the people of the state. Library services should be available widely throughout the state to bring within convenient reach of the people appropriate opportunities for reading, study, and free inquiry. Providing and supporting adequate library services is a proper and necessary function of government at all levels. It is the basic right of citizens to know about the activities of their government, to benefit from the information developed at public expense, and to have permanent access to the information published by state agencies. So those are the ORS that pertain to public libraries in the very beginning of all of the rest of them that do. Well, it seems fitting that we're here tonight to talk about possibly establishing a public library for Kaiser because it is National Library Week. which is April 3 through 9th. It was so nice of them to do this on the right week. But it is an important week for those of us who love libraries. We're here tonight to offer the city of Keizer a functioning library. It's a unique opportunity. We can become a public library and a member of CCRLS. We can and will meet the standards that require that. The city of Keizer has shown a really strong commitment to creating healthy bodies of the residents in our city by supporting parks as strongly as you do. Now it's time to show that you value the minds of our children, our adults, and our seniors in this city as much as you value their healthy bodies. Keizer Library has operated as an all-volunteer library until last September, when we realized that it simply was not possible to allow a volunteer library manager to do the entire function. And so we took money out of our savings and we hired a half-time library manager who's also here tonight. Clara is back there. She's made a lot of difference for us, being able to work half-time along with our volunteer manager. But we can only sustain having a paid half-time manager until June of 2023. And at that point, we no longer have the resources to do it any longer. This board, unlike any other board, is committed to bringing a public library to Keizer. We need the city to step up to the plate and help us, because there's no way that we can do it without you. The state of Oregon has set 10 minimum conditions for public libraries in Oregon, and that was one of the handouts that you received. Of the 10, there are 8 that we currently satisfy. Open to the public a minimum of 20 hours, provide a collection comprising books, media, or electronic resources, offer at least one free public access computer, we do have 4, offer free public wireless internet access, we have Wi-Fi, provide a website that enables local library users to access the State Library of Oregon resources and services, we do that. We dedicate at least a half full-time equivalent of paid staff. Number 8 is having basic policies in place, several of them, they're all accessible through our website. Provide basic services for reference and youth services, we are doing that. Number 10, completing the annual statistical report for the state library we wouldn't do until we were a public library. So we'll tick off that one when we get to public library status. And that leaves number 1 is the big one. Have at least 1/2 of its operational support from public funds. That's why we can't do it without you. Once we've gone through the process that the Oregon State Library requires, and we've been declared a public library, we will meet a preponderance of the essential level of the Oregon Library Association Public Library Division essential standards, which will allow us to become a full member of CCRLS. And I think this would be a great time to invite John Hunter to join me here so he can talk about preponderance.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. And I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be talking about the prospect of Keizer Community Library becoming a full member of the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library Service. CCRLS is an organization that has evolved over time, and we have adapted to serve member library needs as technology and society have adapted. One of the big quantum leaps that we performed was in the mid-1980s. We offered a library automation system to member libraries. Prior to that, you may recall libraries had card catalogs. Now we're providing an amplified courier service. We're hoping in the next fiscal year to start offering centralized sort for libraries. So big volume libraries like McMinnville and Newburgh and Silver Falls and Dallas, they wouldn't have to sort their books anymore and take up a lot of space in their meeting rooms. As the services that we have offered evolved, so have our membership standards and the documents that support those processes. The 2018 Public Library Division, Public Library Standards were sort of a quantum leap forward in evolution. Those have been supplanted in 2021 by a more fulsome version that's mindful of the fact that the statutory definition of what a public library is has evolved. And BJ just gave you that overview, that snapshot. But before I was CCRLS Executive Director, I worked for a member library. I was part of the membership committee. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how many standards of the essential standards, the baseline standards, should a prospective member library meet? 40%, 60%? Should it be all of them? Presently, there's a little bit of a wording issue that we are addressing through CCRLS, some documents that need to be updated to conform. But we had very long, very fulsome discussions about what the definition was. And we settled on a pretty elegant solution. A member library needs to satisfy the preponderance of the baseline standards, the essential standards. There's another document that supports the application process, and it's called the Application Procedure for Public Library Membership. It describes sort of a 3-year process, if you will, where a prospective member supplies documentation about their budgetary capacity, sort of a library plan for implementing services. It's more of a step-by-step. Here are the things we really need to see. Part of that is the state library acknowledgement that the member organization is on the path to becoming a full-fledged, legally established public library. But it's ultimately, as part of that process, that 3-year process of membership, PIM, the member library directors, they create sort of a task force of their own. They go through the list. They look at the assets that the prospective member library has. In this case, the public computers that are available, the collection, the space, the technological resources, the staffing that's being provided. And it's a sense of, in the context of the overall body of standards, what are they doing? How does that fit in CCRLS? There is a broad consensus within CCRLS that the proposal as it's being described would meet all of the terms for membership within CCRLS. I know there was a little bit of confusion, a little bit of ambiguity. Somebody was enterprising and found a copy of the council bylaws as they're currently written. There's a couple issues. There is one typo where in the bylaws at the moment it says that a member library or applying library would have to meet at least the essential level, which implies sort of that you would have to meet. I assure you that's not the case. We've drafted language that was approved just this last Friday by the member library directors. It's going to the CCRLS Council in May, ultimately to be approved in September because council bylaw change has to be done at 2 different meetings. I'm very confident that that will happen. So that was maybe more than you bargained for, but ultimately I want to assure you that all of the documentation, the spirit of welcome within CCRLS, it all supports the proposition that the Keizer Community Library is proposing to present to us as prospective members.
Thank you very much. One thing I'd like to put on the record for everybody, who here pays property taxes? Okay, there's everybody in the room. Have you looked at your property tax bill? There's a line on there that says,
Regional library tax,
and guess what that's for?
CCRLS.
we are already paying for the CCRLS. Every single one of us who pays property taxes are already paying to be a part of this regional library system. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that we are already putting money in to that system, every single household in Keizer. So, thank you very much. Any questions on the CCRLS? Councilor Starr.
I'm the enterprising individual that found the discrepancy. So.
And as a librarian, brava, thank you for finding that. And, sort of the other issue that's going on is I did mention there were 2018 standards that were a quantum change. Because of 2021 standards, we're also having to clean up some other language as well, but that's very pro forma. As I say, it's already been agreed to. I have every confidence that council will approve those changes as well.
And that's supposed to happen at your May meeting?
Yeah, so the first draft will go at the May meeting. Those meetings are open to the public. Anybody is welcome to participate. And as I say, because it is a bylaws change, unfortunately, it does require a second vote. And because we follow an academic schedule, we don't meet again until September. But once it's passed in May, I think there's every expectation that it'll pass again in September as well.
But the official vote, like the final vote, won't happen until September?
Second week thereof, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question, I missed the definition of preponderance.
Oh, sure.
I know what the word means. I'm just looking for, in relation to how many of the standards are required to be met. Give me, like, preponderance for one person could be one thing, preponderance for somebody else could be something else.
Right. So in a literal sense, in sort of the law and order sense, the preponderance of the evidence, it's literally 50% plus one.
Okay.
I think the reason that felt like an elegant solution when we were revising our membership application was because it allows for judgment to be exercised so that you're not trying to meet an arbitrary number of those boxes, right? On the what PLD is asking you to set as baseline standards.
I read them all.
Yeah, no, right. And there's a lot of them, right? And I think you would reasonably expect that most of our member libraries don't tick all those boxes, and some are more successful than others. And so by saying we want you to meet a preponderance of the standards, it's really clearly a sense that those metrics that really matter in terms of your capacity to deliver effective public library services, those are the ones that we really care about. And I think in a group of peer librarians, library directors, there's a sense that we're going to look at your application in the best of all possible faiths, wanting to grow our numbers, because librarianship is by definition a collaborative profession. And if there are any issues that we feel like are essential to be addressed through the application process could potentially take up to 3 years, which is designed to give an applicant time to meet those rare items that may be identified that we would want to see some growth in. But really the sense is the application is intended to facilitate a successful membership. It's not meant to be in any way an impediment or a barrier. And that's where preponderance got us to a elegant solution. I'm trying to see what Merriam-Webster says is the dictionary definition, but
I think my concern in
the superiority in weight, power, importance, or strength.
Please proceed.
Sorry.
I think my question in asking is, I deal with program standards and requirements. We don't get to meet a preponderance of them in my day job. We have to meet them all.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying looking for a little bit of guidance on the interpretation of preponderance.
Okay.
And
so-
is that going to change year to year?
No.
If people and directors change and,
I think if I understand where you're coming from now that you're asking me again, the minimum conditions for public libraries in Oregon, those are really the ones that matter. They matter so much that they were put into statute.
okay.
Everything beyond that is preference and sort of, Lake Oswego Public Library, I think, is recognized in the profession as being a super high-performing library. Everybody would love to be Lake Oswego. Not everybody, well, in terms of having a very...
Thank you for
No,
clarifying.
I know. Everybody would like to be Lake Oswego Library in that they have a very passionate community that loves that library almost to the point of death, where they're forever needing a bigger facility, because there's just such demand for services. Not every municipality is Lake Oswego or wants to be Lake Oswego and has the capacity to deliver those level of services. So what is appropriate for your community?
Okay.
That's really what ultimately matters, so long as you meet the statutory requirements that determine the most important minimums.
Great.
One of the things that you get with CCRLS, we provide the library automation system, that's the check-in, check-out borrowing software. That's a really expensive package. We provide the courier service. We provide access to the statewide databases, ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, Canopy streaming video. All of that comes on top of the fact that as a member, you would be part of a formula-based reimbursement scheme where the CCRLS budget is roughly $4 million annually. About 1.6 million of that $4 million is direct reimbursement to member libraries. That $1.6 million is divided in two different pots. Half of it is a portion based on a member library's circulation to non-residents. So if a Dallas patron came and borrowed something from your library, that's a non-resident, a wood burner,
Brooks.
or Brooks, there you go, okay? The other half is from property valuation. Kaiser has a fairly healthy property. It's got a big impact on the property tax rolls. So you would be getting direct financial reimbursement to subsidize the operation of the library. In addition to these other things that it's disadvantageous for you to try and purchase on your own, given your size.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Councilor Kohler in a sec. So some of the property taxes, which I mentioned earlier that we are already paying, would then come back to the Keizer Library and actually help run the operation here. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
And then one more comment I'm going to have, and I'll go to Councilor Kohler, who is very prepared here as well. We are the only city that was formed and did not establish a public library prior to the tax limitation, the property tax limitation. So we are in a very unique position. Measures 547 and 50 took away our ability to add to our property tax base, which has been an impediment for us to, get into these conversations, plus some of the other barriers of past conversations. So this is a very different approach, which I think is very helpful and positive, that knowing who we are and where we are with our public funds that are very constrained under Oregon tax law, and our 100% of our property taxes that come to the city go to partly meet the police budget, and the rest of the funds then go to, in our general fund, to very limited services and planning and parks and operations. Recognizing those realities would be a real step forward in our conversations for helping make this a reality. So that's very helpful.
I'll offer one, I'm sorry, my brain's sort of like a ping pong ball, and when you say things, it triggers other thoughts. Library collections are becoming increasingly digital. And in the sense that CCRLS tends to provide most of those digital assets, Overdrive, which is statewide access to ebooks and audiobooks, it's probably the most popular electronic service we offer by far. And its use, its growth in use far exceeds growth of the overall collection. So even in as much as you may be at a certain disadvantage because of tax laws that have been passed formerly, you're also at an advantage in that you're coming at a time where librarianship is definitely evolving, and it's becoming easier to provide services in a more nimble fashion than it would have been, say, 10 or even 20 years ago.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councilor Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, let me say thank you for being here. There's a number of questions that I've had, and John and BJ and I have and Councilor Starr have had several different discussions and talks, and I appreciate you being here and be able to say, okay, now what about this? And it's very valuable, so thank you. I've had a number of constituents call me, and some of them are saying, oh yeah, we got to have a library. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And then I have others going, how much is it going to cost? And so I have to listen to both sides, so I have to ask you some questions that I normally probably wouldn't ask, but I'm going to ask them anyway because I have to. Isn't that terrible?
That's all right. I'm a librarian. That's what I do, is answer questions.
Wonderful. Okay, so when I first got when I first sent the bylaws to Councilor Starr and all the rest of those stuff, and I'd gone over them too, that whole achieves at least the essential level, man, that threw up a big red flag because I looked at the essential levels and I'm thinking, we don't have a place to build a 10,000 square foot library. We don't have a place. And so I'm thinking, how do we do that? So I very much appreciate the efforts that you've gone through to have a vote and to talk about all the other things and add the word preponderance where it doesn't exist today on those things. So that helps a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing that in your actual documents at some point. Because I looked at that and I went, holy smoke, Batman, we don't have that much money. And so that's a big concern, because I'm not only looking at the $400,000 we're looking to put toward this with the ARPA funds, but also what do we do in perpetuity? And that's the biggest question. You know, what if we get this started and then we say, oh, okay, well, now you're going to have another 5,000 square feet, or now you're going to have to do this. What assurances do we have that the additional requirements are not going to be added to us?
I think you have every assurance in that once you're a member library, you're a member library. We don't go back and tell existing member libraries, oh, seems like you're a little deficient in this, we want you to step up. It is the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library Service. Every member library is its own standalone institution and a full and equal member. So municipalities, the college library, the Grand Ronde Tribal Library, each community sets its own standard for the delivery of service. And we're a cooperative that has members as large as Salem Public Library, as small as Amity and Lyons, that have very, very small libraries, obviously serving much smaller communities. But there is no precedent for CCRLS as an institution to enforce conditions for membership beyond those that are explicit in the application procedure.
Great, thank you, because I look at the ORS and then I look at the the Oregon Library Association, and they're kind of different. And so that's why I kind of needed a little.
And to reinforce what you just said, the statutory requirements are statutory. It's Oregon law. Have to jump that hurdle. The OLA standards, those are advisory. They're entirely optional. They're recommendations.
Yes, accepting that in the bylaws, it says that you must meet at least the essential level of the Oregon Library, and that's where I was really getting confused and nervous.
And fairly so. I was confused when I actually read that language because it should have been changed when we changed the application standard. The language that was just approved by the PIM library directors last week, any new library seeking membership in CCRLS shall satisfy the terms of the relevant application procedure for library membership. Application procedures have been established for public libraries and libraries serving federally recognized tribes. And then the application procedure basically says you have to be a legally established public library, which means you have to meet the statutory minimums, and that's it.
Oh, so the Oregon Library Association things are gone?
They're advisory.
They're advisory?
Well, and then as part of it says you have to meet the preponderance. And again, that is a sufficient number of standards based on the judgment of the existing membership. Keeping in mind, we're biased towards admitting members.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because I looked at the ORS part, and then I thought, okay, we can do that. That's not any problem. But then I looked at how do we become a member of CCRLS, and that really is much more benefit to us than just being a public library, because it offers so many more features and things to us. And so I looked at that, and then I pulled that up, and it said, oh, you have to do all these other things, and that's so I do recognize that being a member of the CCRLS is very important. But we also right now are a member of the regional, how did you say that?
We individually pay for CCRLS.
Okay, so that gives every citizen of Kaiser an opportunity now to go to a regional library like Salem Library and check out up to 10 books without any cost at all. And I think a lot of people, when I ask them about that, do you know this? And they go, oh yeah, we can do that. It's cost $60 a year. So I go, no, hold her, Newt. And so I think a lot of people aren't educated at all what is available there for them at no cost.
Fair enough. That's probably true.
All right. So I'm seeing a lot of head nods from the state librarian. So would you, at this point, because a lot of things that we've been talking about are going, the interface between and the cooperation between the CCRLS and the state library. So I think this might be a good time to hear from Darcy Hanning. Would that be okay? All right.
I want to mention that within the last year, Grand Ronde Tribal Library has become a member of CCRLS. They did not meet 29 of the 163 essential level requirements from the OLA requirements, suggestions, you had a better word, advisory. They missed 29 out of 163. We have already met that many, and we have only 3 that we don't think we can meet. The size suggestions that are in there, and there are 2 that pertain to having Friends of the Library and a library foundation, which we don't currently have, so they're not applicable. We think we will meet 160 of the 163 requirements by the time that we apply to CCRLS. We're pretty confident. John Goodyear and I have been through these, and that's our determination that we have enough skill and enough background and enough workers to meet 160 of the 163.
Yeah, these were just some of them that hit me in the face and going, well,
Sure.
This is going to cost a lot of money.
Sure.
How are we going to do that? And we don't have the space in Kaiser to do that, period. So.
And I think if you looked at the frequently asked questions that we put out, we don't have plans to change where we are located at this point. We have a nice little space. Would we love a $5 million library? Well, everybody would love a $5 million library. It's not realistic. And I turn this over to Darcy Hanning.
Hello, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Darcy Hanning. I'm an employee of the State Library. located in Salem. My official title is Public Library Consultant. Sorry, is that better?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm a public library consultant, and so I work with communities when they are looking to establish a legally and officially recognized public library. So I'm primarily here to answer questions. We do have the philosophy that we like communities to provide a public library service whenever possible, and the minimum conditions were developed specifically in, you know what I'm going to do? Here we go. Specifically in mind to assure that there is a basic level of service across all libraries in Oregon, so that patrons are assured of getting very similar levels of service regardless of where they live when they have a legally established public library. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions.
So I'm going to lead off with one. So consultant, that sounds like some assistance that would help us continue the process while CCRLS finishes their bylaws, updates, and so forth, that you and your office would be available to assist the Kaiser Community Library and the City of Kaiser in these ongoing conversations about getting to that place and what that would look like. Is that correct?
Most definitely, that is correct. In addition, once you establish a legally and officially recognized public library, the state library provides additional resources to public libraries. For example, we have a youth services consultant that is available to help with summer reading programs, Ready to Read grant. It would be an additional funding source that you would receive every year. We provide, technical assistance. I'm trying to think what we do a lot. It's just like, so that even as they go through the process to become officially recognized, we don't just then say, nice knowing you. We're around for the long haul and to assist libraries throughout their lifetime.
So I heard that word, funding for summer reading programs. That's money.
It's money. You do get money. You get access to, you get access via CCRLS, but the statewide databases that John mentioned, those come from the state library. We have a statewide contract that gives everyone access to electronic articles and journals for research and for enjoyment. Over the years, we have also funded some of the libraries that access Overdrive. It's a little tricky, so I don't want to get into all of the details, but we do provide funding for services directly to patrons.
Okay, I'm going to open up questions. Looking. Councilor Herrera.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm biased because I grew up in libraries.
Great.
And, it was either park or the library.
Yeah.
And we had a large family of 10, and I wanted to go to the park, but the guys that went to the library, they could read better. So. Anyway, as far as, we all kind of, I don't sense anybody does not want a library.
Correct.
Anybody up here, I don't sense that at all.
Right.
But what I do see is the resources part, how we can, and I guess my question would be, you that've been around in this, is there like additional funding in terms of like grants or things like that you can have once you're established, or do you have to do it? I'm looking at what I hear is, library and stuff, but it's going to cost us, the same thing. Cost of core.
Yeah.
But I know what my heart wants, but I want to get there.
Right.
And I don't look at it as cost as much as investment. We're part of a scholarship program with the LAC that we're part of. And somebody says, why are you giving away this money? We're not giving away money. We're investing in our community. And it's been proven over and over again. And I think library, I always ask myself two questions. Is it beneficial to all our community, no matter who you are, where you and where are the resources? That's a tough part.
Yeah.
But I want us to get there.
Yeah.
But I do understand and I don't even call it pushback. It's like we want to find out what's going,
Yep.
And so in a reasonable way, I'm open to. But as soon as I read some of the stuff, I'm going, man, I want a library. I'm thinking about grandkids here in town, and they're really good readers, and I see so much potential ahead. bringing, and then the bilingual part kind of turns me on because I'm trilingual,
Right.
and I can see so many possibilities,
Yeah.
But I appreciate all of you and the supporters. That always helps. All of you folks are here, and that's my take. I'm not gonna get in the weeds. I know what I want, and so thank you very much.
And to that point, when we talk about resources, then we'll be looking at the proposed budget and so forth. And again, this is a draft. And as we look at what resources are going to be necessary for startup and then ongoing operations, we have time as the CCRLS does their part, and we have the conversations. This is not a one and done, folks. So if you're marking your calendars, check the box, we're done. No, we'll be calling on all y'all again. This is going to have to be an ongoing development of what's this going to look like, what are the obligations, what are the opportunities, how we're going to reach out to the community, things like that are going to frame, working between, I'm starting to feel like, this between now and September, when we have the opportunity to, if we want to, talk about a ring and a date. But up until then, we really can't, but we have time then to work on what the terms are, what the benefits are, and what our challenges are. So I see this as an ongoing conversation between now and then, or however long it takes. We've waited 40 years. I think another few months isn't going to kill us. I know. I grew up in libraries too. The library where I grew up was a converted hacienda, and they left all the ironwork and the beautiful sculptures there on that site. So not only do I remember all the different nooks from all the rooms converted into different spaces in the library, but also the ironwork and the gardens that were around it as well. And it was a very special place, and we want to have that same sense of place and experience for our entire community. So thank you very much for making yourself available. And another question, Councilor Herrera. I looked to Herrera, so I'm going to look now to Kohler. Councilor Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, there's all kinds of questions that I have, and I don't know if you're the right person to answer these or not. One of the things is, I understand that CCRLS has got some computers and things that we'd be adding to our current facility. Is that true?
I'm getting a head nod over here.
And do we have capacity? Do we have places to put those?
And we're getting a head nod.
We do, because they would be circulation computers, correct?
Yeah, so
we have to have you at the microphone. Sorry, we are broadcasting. Thank you, Darcy.
Yeah, so especially smaller libraries, but even some of the medium-sized and bigger, Salem Public Library, 17 of their PACs, their public access catalog computers are provided by CCRLS. So we provide a variety of staff machines, what you would need to run behind the circulation desk, and public access computers as well, including internet computers and catalog computers.
Perfect. So that was, again, one of the questions, do we have space? And so I understand that there are a number of people in Kaiser that have and do pay for the $60 per year library card from Salem. Do we know how many do that?
It's something we could find out.
But all 9,000 don't pay $60 a year. There are 9,000 patrons of CCRLS from the city of Kaiser. A lot of them have basic cards, that free card that allows 10 checkouts. I don't know how many pay $60 for the full access.
So you're, BJ, let me see, make sure I get that right. You said that there are 9,000 people.
Between 8,000 and 9,000 people in Kaiser who have
currently
cards at Salem.
A library card at Salem? And how many of them have one in Kaiser?
At this point, we have about 900 cardholders. However, that's increased from 300 last September.
Right, when we had the open house, we did a lot of cards.
We did a bunch then, but we've done them all along. Mm-hmm. So we've more than tripled.
What kind of traffic do you think we would have at the library?
I think there's no way that I can tell you, but I think that if they had access to pick up a hold that they had placed in the CCRLS regional system and could come to Kaiser to do it instead of having to go to Silver Falls, as we do, or Salem to pick up their hold, they would use Kaiser for that, especially.
Okay. And are we going to talk at some point about costs and that?
We are, but
okay.
That's kind of next. I'm going to go to Councilor Starr and then Councilor Herrera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So one thing that I think you said, Mr. Hunter, was citizens. So, meaning Kaiser has to go to Salem right now, and so they're considered not a citizen of Salem, right? Residents. What does that do to our community that maybe lives outside of the city limits of Kaiser, but they have a Kaiser address and zip code? What would this look like for them? And then I have a couple other questions.
Sure, I appreciate the question. What is most customary is residents that live within a city limits. So in this case, your folks that actually live within the boundaries of the city of Kaiser would be full-service patrons in the sense that they would be able to borrow up to 50 items at a time and place 25 holds per card holder. Every member of the household would be eligible for a free library card. The reason you still have some folks who are probably paying the $60 out of habit, or through choice because they're the power users that every library loves, that every member of the family has 50 items on those cards, and they keep filling it up, and so they want that 50 item access. You may remember it wasn't too terribly long ago, if you were a basic patron, if you were a rural patron, somebody who lived outside the city limits of a member library, you only got to borrow one item. And it was only, I think, 2017. It was fairly recently that we bumped that up to 10. And in most instances, I think you saw that probably folks decided it wasn't worth it to pay the $60 and because 10 was good enough, right? You would still have that paradigm here in Kaiser where folks that live in the city limits will get the 50 items to borrow. The folks that unfortunately live just outside the city limits are limited to the 10.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I just have a couple more questions that I think this is more just confirmation, because BJ, you mentioned 126 out of the 129 standards. So I just want to clarify how we are currently meeting them. One of them is at least, I told you I read these, so I'm sorry. At least one public terminal with assistive technology, like screen readers, magnification. Do we do that now?
That's one that we need to check on to see whether or not the computers that we currently have would magnify. That's one of our unmet, because we haven't clarified that yet.
Or the screen reader. Okay, that's important, I think, as we look at our diversity and equity committee and things like that, making sure that those pieces are in place. Another question I had, it talks about the library offers a printer and photocopier. Would we be asking our patrons to pay to use that, or how does that?
We currently have one, okay. And they pay 10 cents a page to print, which is a standard charge.
And then there were a couple other standards that talked about, here's an example. If more than 10% of the library community speaks a language other than English in the home, the library responds by purchasing a significant amount of culturally appropriate materials in that language in a variety of formats.
Currently, we purchase almost none of our material. Our entire collection is from donations that we receive. However, I can tell you that the grant money that we have received over the last year has been used for Spanish and bilingual materials.
Okay. And then last one. Well, maybe not, sorry. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If more than 10% of the community speaks a language other than English in the home, the library responds by adding staff or volunteers capable of speaking with and hi Daisy, okay, culturally engaging with those patrons in their primary language, and Daisy just answered the question. Thank you very much, Daisy.
We also have 20% of our library board who are Latina.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councilor Herrera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did you have another question, Lainey?
I mean, probably, but, you know.
One of the things I think about is I believe in accessibility and people have access to government or anything. And as far as, I mentor at a local Title I school. And what I always remember is our best readers, my best readers didn't have any, a lot of them didn't have cars, you know, so they couldn't go up to what we wanted to do. And I kept thinking, you know, gosh, I wish, you know, and they could walk right here. So I think I look at it from a different stand, you know. Yeah, we all know we got to get there as far as resources, I understand that. But there's so many elements that ring in my head in terms of accessibility to those that, less fortunate folks, put it that way. And I think it's very important. And I do know your board members, Latino board members.
Yes.
And they're wonderful. And some of the things they've told me about they'd like to see, I'm really excited about, really, as far as kids reading in Spanish and bilingual and all that. I really believe it's helped me in my career learning more than one language. So, and I see a lot of potential. My grandkids, I want them to learn both languages, and they're doing it, so.
That's wonderful.
My kids didn't do it.
And we know that a public library in Kaiser would help to reach the population who cannot easily get down to
Right,
Salem.
yeah. And, you know, in my world, that's, you know, I've heard people say that they don't care about this park here, but, you know, the folks there have to work, you know. It's not they don't care, they don't have time, you know. Mom comes home and dad goes to work. And so sometimes these indicators really are yelling at us like, hey, we want to have our kids be able to go get have a library. And the libraries, to me, like I said, they're really, the best thing we ever got was a set of encyclopedias. I'll never forget that. And so that's where I sit. I understand where everybody's coming from, and I realize that we have to get some resources, and we have to, but I want to get there. I really do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's it for me.
Question?
Oh,
Councilor Kohler?
just a comment. I got to spend a little bit of time with Mark Johnson over in Dallas, and I appreciated him taking time to visit with me and such. There's 25 cents a copy over there.
Oh, okay. Fundraiser. Well,
I came at the right time.
so speaking of which, I think it would be helpful for us to hear from 2 member libraries who would be part of the conversation about Kaiser joining the CCRLS. So I would invite up Mark Johnson, and then I'll invite up
Christy Davis.
thank you, Christy Davis, to come and visit with us about, so tell us about joining your group and what your experience is in being a CCRLS library. So thank you very much. And it's really important that we have the microphone. I don't know how you want to share it, if you just go back and forth,
I'll
because
talk
we are
first, I guess.
televising.
You know, I just think of CCRLS, we would not be able to function if we weren't part of CCRLS. We would be a library, but there would be so much we wouldn't have. We get a lot of books from Silver Falls. We wouldn't be able to do that.
We get a lot of books from Dallas.
So we trade. We have a courier that comes every day. We get 6 blue big bins full of books from all the other libraries, and we send about 5 or 6 books bins out as well, plus all the electronic resources. And she said they met 160 of the 163. She's doing better than I am, and we've had a library since 1905. So you don't have to meet all of them. There's always something you just can't do. And nobody's come to us and said we're not a library because we didn't meet something. We had a meeting Friday, and all the directors were asked, do you support Kaiser coming into the system? And it was unanimous vote that yes, we want Kaiser to join, and we're not going to throw any impediments. So, you know, you are welcome. I know we can't do anything about the money thing, but even with the state, we just got a grant from the for an intern for the summer, $1,800 for a high school teenager for 15 hours a week. So that helps us, and we don't have to fund it. It's being funded through the state. It's a small amount, but it's really helpful. We're not a large library. We have 7 FTE, as I told him, and we're also don't meet the size. We have 16,000 citizens, and we have an 8,400 square foot library, and that's not exactly what the state standard would say, the guideline, and we're never going to meet it and way out into the future, because same thing, the funds aren't there to build a new library. We're in an old furniture store that was donated by the mayor's family. So it's real hard to move out when you're in the mayor's. And I'll let Chrissy talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that we're very enthusiastic about having Kaiser join as a public library. We hope that happens. I'll miss seeing some of the Kaiser citizens over at Silver Falls, but it'll be good for you to have them here. Being a member of CCRLS avails everyone in the consortium to have things that we couldn't have individually. We simply couldn't. We couldn't have all of access to all of the materials that we have. The databases that we share as CCRLS are very expensive, but then when we share that burden collectively, it becomes very affordable. Also, once you're a public library, the assistance from the State Library of Oregon is really wonderful. And I think one of the things that I was thinking of was sitting here listening to all of the things. The State Library of Oregon provides a lot of training and support for library staff. They subscribe to Niche Academy, which provides all sorts of training because once you are a public library and you've got a lot of people coming through, you'll want to know things about best practices and handling people who might have neurodivergence, or you might want to know best practices in dealing with people who may be suffering from mental illness, and you'll want to make sure that you are meeting the best standards for people who might have disabilities or have print challenges. And so the State Library just avails so many resources to staff to help us make sure that we are meeting the standards and serving the public well.
Thank you. Questions for these esteemed guests?
Told you. So I'm getting a little excited here. When you talked about the bins of books that are coming in, the big blue bins, do you guys coordinate? I think where I'm going is, do you coordinate who has what materials so you can kind of spread out your material purchasing budget? So you don't all have the same books, or help me understand that, because that's what gets me excited. Sorry.
We have varying book budgets. So, some libraries have better, more robust book budgets than others. We all buy bestsellers. That's going to happen.
Okay.
And then we're all going to buy things that are of particular interest to our community based on patron request and patron feedback. Let's say that there are a lot of, I'm just, making something up here. There are a lot of cat enthusiasts in Dallas. And so Mark buys a lot of books about cats, but he's allergic to cats. And then let's say in Silverton that people are really interested in dogs and dog breeding. Well, that's great, because the person can go on to the CCRLS computer and they can order Mark's cat books if they live in Salem, and people can come and order our dog books if they live in Woodburn. And those requests, if those books are sitting on the shelf, or DVDs or audiobooks, those requests are usually fulfilled. That's usually in the patron's hand within 48 hours.
Wow.
They get pulled quickly, they get put into the bins, they get picked up by the courier every day, and there's a pretty nice turnaround. And so, to answer your question more specifically, no, we don't super coordinate our purchases, but we probably all have specialties, we all have bestsellers, and the needs get met.
Great, thank you.
And I'm sure most libraries do this, we always look and see what the other libraries have as well. And CCRS provides what we call our web pack, where the catalog, and they have a list of bestsellers and books that have just come into the system, and we go through it and look for things with high holds on them. And if we don't have it, we go, 9 people in the system want that, we don't have it, we're going to buy that. And that way it circulates around.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing to mention. If there's something that's become really popular in the system, we all work to make sure that there's more of it so that people don't have to wait as long.
Thank you.
Harry Potter fans would have really loved that back in the day. So, Councilor Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, with the audiobooks, how does that work? Can they download those, or how does that really work with?
There's more than one way.
CCRLS?
Yeah, there's one way is we have an app called Libby that my wife always, when she's doing the dishes, listens to audiobooks that she downloads. But we also have audiobooks in the library. We have thousands of audiobooks at Dallas, and all the libraries do. People can download them that way as well.
There's an app for that, that's right. And that really appeals to a lot of our young people too. You know, yes, I have bookcases at home that are loaded with all of my favorites and so forth, but our young people, especially if they're more mobile, and all of us remembering moving those big boxes of books in and out of the dorm rooms and stuff, or in and out of apartments, now they just have to grab their tablet and go. So maybe it's better on the environment too. And that's another thing too, is what having the couriers here, the books here and so forth. We're talking about, you know, reducing vehicle miles traveled, our, you know, climate strategies and so forth. So when we have one large delivery here and people can come to a central place, and we are the second largest city in Marion County, we're going to be saving vehicle miles traveled. So that has that co-benefit as well. Okay, so thank you very much for sharing with us and about welcoming us to CCRLS. We really appreciate you coming tonight and
Thank you.
hope for more conversations for sure. I'd like to invite up now, we've had in our packet, somewhere, I can't remember which page it was, we have talked about the costs and what that looks like, and who would like to at least start that conversation. Again, this is a start. We'll have to figure out the what, and then as we move through this process, we'll figure out the how. We'll figure out what that funding mechanism can look like, and then how we're going to have that conversation with the community on what that looks like. So again, I don't want to leap to an end point at this point. I want to see make sure we're looking at all of the options. This is going to be an evolving conversation, and then we will decide how we will proceed with the resources. BJ.
I'm back.
You are back.
I am back. Our request for funding from the city of Kaiser is for $125,000. That would cover a full-time professional librarian that we would hire, a half-time clerk that would help cover hours at the desk. We will still use a bevy of volunteers at the library. That is what we were all about. But it's important to meet standards that we have a paid employee at the desk during open hours, and so that half-time clerk would help that. It also includes the $10,000 that the city of Kaiser is currently paying for the lease for the 2 rooms that we have, plus the annex. It covers a small amount of a book budget, about $4,000. And about $11,500 for operating expenses, which doesn't cover everything, but Kaiser Community Library feels we can make up whatever else it doesn't cover. $125,000 to operate a city library, a public library, is an extremely modest budget. And I think because we have such good researchers on the council, you probably have looked at what library budgets look like around the state. They don't look like anything close to $125,000, but we believe that we can do that in a sustainable way. We're not talking just the 3 years of possible ARPA funds. We're talking beyond that with the addition of a COLA, because we feel that we should probably be adding to the salary of our 2 employees at the same rate that the city does. So we would follow the guidelines that Mr. Wood sets up for COLAs. So there's a modest increase as you go down the road. But we're not looking at springing up, we need $1 million now. That's just, it's not in the ballpark for Kaiser. We know that. And we're comfortable with that $125,000 as a starting place.
So just to reiterate, so that would, that $125,000 ask, we've already covered $10,000 of it. That's already in our budget.
That's correct.
We the city of Kaiser provides about $20,000 a year to the Kaiser Heritage Foundation for the operation of that building. So the Kaiser Community Library doesn't have to pay for a separate facility. They are part of that essentially cooperative. I know that's not what officially it is, but that's how it functions. For the community, for the cultural center, which houses the community library, the museum, the Kaiser Homegrown Theater, and Kaiser Arts Association. So all that is that beautiful 100-plus-year-old building next door, and the foundation maintains that building, and the library gets to live there without paying additional separate charges. So I just want for people who are watching to understand what that financial dynamic is. And so the actual additional cost is $115 plus
Correct.
a COLA for that employee. Then a COLA is just, we have to define our acronyms, a cost of living allowance, which all of us who work for a paycheck hope to get as costs increase, that we get a cost of living increase to our salaries. So that's what the ask is. So I'm going to put that out there. Questions? Councilor Starr.
You would be so disappointed, wouldn't you, BJ?
I would.
See, I worry, to your point, it is such a modest amount, and I think that's what scares me. Just to be honest, it feels.
We actually want 450,000. No,
Which is where I wanted to go from a clarification question. You mentioned 125,000 as a starting point. I think that's the thing that just, I want to see us get to yes, and I want to see us get to a library. Just listening to your colleagues made me think of Mrs. Schimmel, who was such a dear to put up with me when I was a rambunctious child in the summertime. But that's where I'm nervous that it's not enough. I'm not saying I wanted, that's the conversation I think that needs to be had. Is that 125,000 realistic? And does that include benefits for staff? Because running a nonprofit that when I started, we didn't have benefits, and now we're able to get to a point where we're offering benefits. I think that's a question. I think that's an equity question.
Sure.
So I'm just looking for a little more detail on that piece.
When we were looking at salaries that are paid to professional library directors around the state, and of course, libraries vary so differently. You have bigger libraries like Salem and much smaller libraries like Dallas. We decided that $30 an hour was a salary that we'd be able to hire a competent professional. We upped it by $5 because we don't feel we can pay for health costs, health benefits. But it would we would also pay for the, of course, I'm not thinking of them now, Social Security, Medicare.
Yeah, payroll taxes.
Payroll taxes, we would pay those, but we would boost the salary by $5 an hour so that the person would be able to buy their own health care.
Got it. Thank you.
And of course, as a nonprofit organization, we're not part of PERS. So that's, as you know, a huge difference in what it takes. Our budget until last September was around $21,000 a year. Our budget this year is $53,000 a year because we're paying Clara to be our half-time library manager. But we're doing it for $53,000. So I don't think that we have looked at the number of $125,000 lightly. We really feel that if we had the cost covered for a full-time library director and a half-time clerk, that with the backup of our cadre of wonderful volunteers who do just so much for us day in and day out, we would be covered. And the only increase I'm seeing is a cost of living adjustment.
You put in your paperwork up to 75,000 reimbursement from the CCRLS.
No, actually, we estimated that we would probably get around $75,000.
So that's a calculation
Oh, yes.
projection?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
And that would go
And it may be a little on the low side, but I'm prone to under
under-promise, over-deliver?
promise, over deliver.
Okay, so part of that match then, just to kind of piggyback on that, is that the 125 on the city side And because it has to be 50, at least a minimum of 50%.
Correct.
So if we were over 50% of city funds, we're still in the good. But that's 75,000 plus what the Kaiser Community Library is able to generate in revenue at this point would meet that need, because that's where the rest of the money, so just folks watching, we're not talking about a total budget of $125,000 to run a Kaiser Community Library with a full-time paid person. We're talking about a total budget that is actually upwards of, I'm trying to remember the number, I don't have that piece of paper in front of me.
200,000 plus, but that would be down the road because there's a process for that reimbursement from CCRLS. And it could be that our timing will be so good that we'll be in for July 1st of 2023. It could be our timing is off a little and it won't be until July 1st of 2024,
So
where
that
we get that reimbursement.
Okay, so that is based on the fiscal year. So our fiscal year for all of the government starts on July 1. So if we were in the process and managed to get to yes in time for the start of the 23-24 fiscal year, we would then receive and it's essentially it's a reimbursement of property tax from CCRLS back into the city of into the Kaiser Library. Is that correct? I'm getting a head nod, but there's words that go with that.
I'm seeing questions and yes.
Yeah, so, in my car, I've got 4 binders full of the history of the discussion of Kaiser and Wither the library. Back in the 80s, up until we started providing automation software, which is a really expensive proposition, there was very much a mindset that it was sort of reimbursing the cities for the CCRLS tax, right? So you're not double dipping. I think it's more a perception that it's support for the services that you're providing to the community, in addition to all the technology and the optional extras that we're asking you. How it's construed now, that $75,000 that's coming through formula-based reimbursement, it's to incentivize the member libraries to loan to rural patrons and members of other communities and foster a cooperative spirit. But yes, literally, it's money that your residents are already paying in a CCRLS tax that funds this whole $4 million operation, and part of what we do is provide direct reimbursement back to member libraries for the provision of certain things.
So I've got a little question that goes with that and follows up on something you heard earlier about people who live outside the city limits of Kaiser, because if we are doing any sort of funding that would come through the city to the people of our community through any sort of billing or tax or whatever, and that's way down the road, so don't get head up about that. But we can only do that for the people who live within the city of Kaiser. We don't have that authority to do that outside. So let's say somebody is in rural Marion County and they want to join the Kaiser Community Library because we're way cheaper than Salem. Can we offer that?
You can.
Sweet. So the people who live just a little bit north on Clear Lake, they don't have to go all the way to Salem, they can come to Kaiser. We would have a fee scale for people to be able to get cards at the Kaiser Community Library or Public Library. And they could then avail themselves of services here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Which would then also be an additional revenue source if you're charging those patrons $40 to $50, $60 to be full service patrons.
All right, $300 a month.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Or not. Then they would drive to Salem. But to that point, the charge that if we want to have the full service cards with Salem is the equivalent of what a household generally pays on their property tax as a resident of Salem. So that's partly how that was calculated. I don't know if it's entirely accurate, but as a former director can now correct me.
I can say that $60 a year is less than most Salem residents pay who own a home.
Okay.
So patrons from other areas who are getting full-service cards at Salem are paying less than Salem residents are usually paying on their property taxes.
Good to know. I was one of those people when I was raising our kids that did buy that card, and that's how BJ and I got to know each other, because she was the children's librarian, and we were down there pretty much every week getting books as I was homeschooling our kids. And it kept me from having to buy massive quantities of books that were just going to be outgrown. Councilor Starr.
So 50% public match, and I do a lot of matches with grants and so forth. So if you got $125,000 from Kaiser, you could never go over a $250,000 budget, correct? I mean, what's the wiggle room on that? Like, no?
That would be correct.
Yeah, it needs to be the 50.
It's pretty, okay, so and that would include, that other 50% would preclude the public library from going after any grants as a 501c3, because that would go into that 50. Okay, thank you.
So maybe in the calculation, I don't know, and maybe I'm getting into the weeds now, that we want to keep the agreement we have between the city and the Heritage Foundation for the operation of that. It is not earmarked for the library, so we may want to keep that out of the conversation. Because it is a separate agreement between the city of Keizer and the Kaiser Heritage Foundation, and the library is simply a member of the foundation, but it benefits the entire building, and is for the operation and maintenance of the building itself. And the agreement between the different organizations in that building is that the library and the museum, since they don't have revenue streams, don't pay rent, but where the Art Association and the theater generally do have revenue streams, and so they provide that match that we have between the city and the Heritage Foundation. So that's going to be a nuance we'll have to discuss as we start looking at how this may shake out.
And the library would be fine with either way.
Okay, so that's an opportunity. Councilor Kohler.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Of course I have some questions. Currently, we're open 20 hours a week, right?
No. 24.
24 hours a week, okay. If we have 1.5 FTEs, are our library hours going to change?
My estimation would be a 37-hour week, because you want your full-time employee to have a little time to open up and close down that they're paid to do. And you don't get people out right at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock when you close. So yes, probably 35 to 37 hours.
If you have 1.5, though, you could stagger those hours enough that you could actually be open a little more. Is that correct?
Possibly. We'd have to look at that.
Okay. And in it talks about MLS. We talked a little bit about that. Are you anticipating getting somebody with a Master's of Library Science or not?
Yes, we would hope to get somebody. Usually it's an MLIS now because it's information sciences. But yes, we would look for someone, hopefully.
ORS doesn't have the I in it, though.
It's old.
Okay. And then it talks in here about the library will provide staff with continued training opportunities and support necessary to identify and meet the needs of their patrons, et cetera. Library maintains support and funds an annual staff development plan. How would those things be funded?
We would expect that a library director would have the time during his or her workday to attend the PIM meetings. That's a requirement that PIM has. I would like to see the person attend the PIM children's group, because I know firsthand how helpful that is when you're providing children's services, and this person would really have a multiple job, which many library directors do have. We would also expect this person to be a member of the Oregon Library Association and to attend the annual conference. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities, and the state library has a lot of training opportunities as well.
But again, the question of that is who funds those? Who funds the trainings?
Well, I'm so glad you asked this question, not only because I get to sit in the chair again, but I was hoping that I would have, I've neglected to mention this earlier. BJ and I are both former children's librarians. You'd never believe I was a children's librarian, and we weren't really allowed to sit next to each other at the PIM library directors meetings because we got into too much trouble. But CCRLS offers a broad variety of committee environments. I went from being a children's librarian to being a cataloging librarian, a technical services librarian. One of the things that I loved coming from the city of Los Angeles that had a huge support system, lots of in-services, lots of training, to going to a relatively small standalone city library, was that through CCRLS, I participated in the Technical Services Committee, the Cataloging Committee, where I learned from my fellow colleagues, where we supported each other, where we actually, as peers, used to lead cataloging trainings. And so a huge benefit of being part of CCRLS as a standalone city library is there is a children's committee, there is a cataloging committee, there is a reference committee for generally teen and adult facing reference librarians, and there's the member library director committee. So CCRLS provides a lot of that direct support to staff, including monthly trainings. This coming month, there's a training on how to do interlibrary loans, and that's all paid for by CCRLS. You just have to make your staff available to participate in that process.
Thank you. That was more than I was looking for, but that's good.
Okay, yep, sorry.
That's always what happens when you go to the library. You get more than you're actually looking for. Instead of having 5 books, you come home with 10. So the how to get to yes is the question we need to get to. Is that next on your list?
It's the next steps toward getting to yes, because as I said earlier, this is the broad conversation. There's a lot of details that we're going to have to discuss and to look at in terms of the budgeting, the agreements, the make sure that we're really clear on what this is going to look like, and so that we can get to a point where we can ask the community for yes.
I do have another question, if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
That's what we're here for, is a work session.
Good. 12 years ago, when we looked at becoming a public library and joining CCRLS, we found out that Salem actually had veto power to say, we're a regional library. We don't want you guys to do that. Is that no longer possible?
To my knowledge, it's never been true.
To my knowledge, it's never been true. There may have been a perception among certain principals that that individual had that sort of authority. However, it's not the case.
Interesting. Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, and I want you to fully understand.
I want to ask the questions.
Well, it's being relatively new in my position, but having a working relationship with CCRLS of 15 and a half years, and now representing CCRLS officially, within Chemeketa Community College, we have a fairly brand new administrative structure. New president, new vice president of academic affairs, new vice president of student affairs, and a lot of the institutional memory of exactly what CCRLS is and what it does has been lost. One of my roles is to rebuild that institutional history, memory, legacy. CCRLS is the Chemeketa Community College. In 1973, when all the librarians of the standalone city libraries that were in Polk Yamhill and Marion County at the time decided they wanted to collaborate and form some sort of shared structure, the entity that already had a body that could make decisions, right, was Chemeketa College. And legislation actually had to be passed by the Oregon State Legislature for CCRLS to exist, for a community college to operate a library service district. The reason I give you that backstory is CCRLS as an entity is an entity of Chemeketa Community College. It gets input from the member library directors through the Polk Yamhill Marion Association, which is somewhat distinct from the college. Then there's a CCRLS Council, which in a municipal context would normally be a library board that provides advice and budgetary consent to the College Board of Education. And then the College Board of Education makes decisions about the operating environment of CCRLS. I'll give you an example that's very specific. Because there is this long history of Kaiser and where it was going to go with the provision of library services, and it's been much discussed. And as I say, I have 4 binders of it sitting in my office. It used to be very long time ago, 30-something, probably 40 years ago, that a member library could not charge a fee to rural patrons for them to receive services beyond just that one loan, right? The College Board of Education made a decision that in that case, Salem could start charging for full service cards for folks who were not city residents. And that was a pretty important decision because that's a legacy decision that all the members' libraries are still living with today. But the point I want you to understand, that wasn't a City of Salem decision. That wasn't ultimately decided by the member library directors or put in force by the member library directors. It was put in force by the College Board of Education. And so CCRLS really is a very impartial third-party provider of support services to its member libraries. And because of the long history that was sometimes fraught, I want to make that 100% crystal clear. I'm Switzerland. Sometimes I drive the courier truck, we get the books where they need to go, we provide the software, we provide the support, we provide the training, and we provide a lot of money, regardless of who the member is, and whether it's Amity or Salem or Keizer Community Library.
Good on that one, thank you.
So the hour is now at 7:30. We've heard a lot of really, really good information. I think next steps after this meeting will be looking at the pieces that we will have to get details on, what this would look like going forward, so that we can bring it back and continue to refine the possibilities for Keizer Community Library to become Keizer Public Library, and then where the ask will be for the City Council and for the library, the Community Library Board as a nonprofit, and then the community. So there are steps yet to be had. At this point, we've had some people who've had to leave, and I totally understand. But I would like to give people who have come here tonight a chance. I really want to be out of here at 8 o'clock. So we'll go until about then and give people like 2 or 3 minutes to come and share their point of view. For council, if we would just take notes on that.
One piece of clarification.
What's that?
This came from the community library. What about this page?
What page is that?
The Keizer Community Library.
The Keizer,
proposal.
The Keizer Community Library proposal fact sheet came from the Keizer Community Library.
And what about this?
And the full-time for implementation page came from, BJ, that came from, I'm sorry, there was one more question that was on the page that says timeline for full implementation, and that came from,
That was the library board.
that was the library board. Okay. So,
That's our best guess.
so this was a proposed timeline. Okay?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for your patience and so forth. And then if we, for council and also for library and CCRLS, if you would take notes on frequently asked questions, that way we can kind of hear from people. And then what we'll be able to do is maybe put together an FAQ, frequently asked questions, acronym, after this meeting, rather than get involved in the dialogue, which would eat up in the time. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. Bill, I'm going to let you go first, absolutely. Just pull the microphone up and just name city of residence and a couple, 3 minutes if you would.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to add some things based on the conversation tonight that might give some clarity. You know, we have a lot of irons in the fire. Outreach is one of the things we are planning to do. Programs, another thing we're planning to do. We kind of pulled back from some of that. We talked about 9,000 cardholders that currently live in Keizer and use Salem Library. And that's opposed to the 900 cardholders we have. Well, we pulled back on our outreach because we thought that this was the most important effort we could make right now, pursuing a public library status with the city of Kaiser as our partner. So we only have so many hours in our workday too, and this is all volunteer. So I wanted to give you some reassurance that once we start our outreach, our expectation is that we will have 2,000 or 3,000 card members rather quickly. But this is our focus right now. In terms of the maximum amount of money, I'm a little nervous here, but in terms of the maximum amount of money we talked about as a cap, if the city is giving us $125,000 to fund the library as the city's 50% commitment, we fully intend to continue fundraising. We fully intend to continue with volunteers. But in addition to that, there are other ways to fund programs. We talked about the reimbursements that might come from CCRLS. We're looking at that to possibly pay for summer teacher assistants to help us with a reading program. That's the money that's going to go into library programs. And we have lots of ideas about that. But also there's the possibility of having an active Friends organization that might be able to acquire grants on our behalf and spend that money on behalf of the library so that would augment our budget but be outside of what our actual working budget would be. So those are just ideas that we had. And I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that we're thinking way outside the box here.
Thank you very much. I do have one person who has signed up, and that's Lori Christopher. Bring you on down. It looks like you're bringing a friend.
I am.
And then I'll take hand raises as we go toward 8 o'clock.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, councilors and Mayor Clark. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. My name is Lori Christopher. I am a citizen of Keizer, lived here for 30 years, and I was mayor from the year 2000 till 2014 when Mayor Clark took over. We had an opportunity to explore the possibility of a public library around 2004 to 2006. And some things have changed that could make a difference, and some things have not changed that could make a difference. I appreciate and agree with everything that all of the librarians have said tonight. And I'll tell you, it's a warmer environment after being in Antarctica in 2006. It was not a welcoming environment. In fact, the 17 libraries and the library directors were angry with us that we would even consider wanting to be part of their elite group without meeting all of the OLA standards. So words matter. And although, and I'm sorry, I forget the name, one of the Johns said, we're going to change this. We've already taken a vote and it's going to happen. And that's great. That's a step forward. Currently, today, in the bylaws, which is the governing document of the CCRLS, it says that every member library, full member library, is required to meet the essential level of the OLA standards. Listen, this should have happened in 2006. So I'm thrilled to death if John's able to hold together his coalition and they vote to change that. And it becomes a preponderance of, or it becomes, Rich had some wonderful ideas back then. At any rate, step forward. It's good. I'm in. So the BJ had said, well, we're asking you for $125,000, but actually the request is for 3 years. so that we would become a provisional member, as is in their bylaws, for 3 years while they work towards the rigorous task of becoming a full member, as John mentioned. It's a rigorous task, and we'll find out where we don't meet what we need to meet in that 3-year period of time. Here's where we change. I can't imagine that, and I'm asking you, we're talking ARPA money. For the first time in history, Kaiser has been given $8.8 million. We've won the lottery. We're a little 40-year-old city. We've never had that kind of money to be able to take care of some of our most pressing needs. And the library is asking for approximately $375,000, $400,000 of that to buy a librarian and a library assistant. I can't imagine elected officials gambling with public money. And what I mean by that is, you're going to buy a librarian for 3 years. Where's the beef after that? Where's the money coming from? Where is the money for time and eternity to pay for that library going to come from? It's going to come from the taxpayers of Kaiser. And that's exactly right. I'm thrilled for this vote. I'm thrilled to have it, but it must be a vote. And you look at the timeline that was presented in the packet, and the timeline says, timeline for full implementation of their request. July 22, adopt a memo of understanding with the City of Kaiser and receive full year's funding. I can't imagine you releasing those funds, gambling with public money, betting on the come that the citizens of Kaiser are going to vote for the library. I can't imagine you doing that. Fall of 2022, receive public library designation from the state library. Excellent. Fall of 22, apply for CCRLS membership. So we don't even have it. We don't have an agreement or anything. We're going to apply for it. And then before the end of 2022, hire a full-time librarian. And we tell that full-time librarian, who is a professional and who probably has an MLS, lucky you, you got a 36-month job. And then what? And then what? We're going to give this to the citizens of Kaiser, and then we're going to take it away if they vote not to keep it? The timeline is a little backwards. What needs to happen first is we have to put together the full package and then take it to the citizens and ask them if they're willing to pay for it. Now, I got to tell you, it can be a very attractive package. We have ARPA money, and I'm not opposed to paying for those 3 years with ARPA money. I'm not opposed at all. Once you have the authorization of the citizens of Kaiser to pay for it after that. So imagine how that ballot looks. That ballot looks like, here's how much it costs to have a library, here's all of the things that you will get with that library, and we're going to pay for the first 3 years with ARPA money that we never had before. We're going to pay for it. That's a pretty attractive ballot measure, but it must be on the ballot. And let me tell you why I feel so strongly about that. Rich and I had an opportunity to meet with the mayor the Saturday before last, and I realized there's been a world pandemic going on. I had a few things on the fire in retiring, and I missed the part where we did not vote for a parks fee tax that's been added to our water bills. I missed the part that we did not vote for the police tax that has been added to our water bills. The 2017 City Council took care of that for us, except for you. I know, Councilor Herrera, you did not vote for the parks fee. The rest of the City Council voted for those fees. Those fees were added to our water bill without a vote. Without a vote. So you obligated me to pay $4 a month for parks and $4 a month, now $5, you just increased it 25%, for cops. It bought 5 cops. Now here's the kicker. I'd have voted for it, but you, not you, the 2017 council took that right away from me. You took away my vote. Now, I want to say, they did a fantastic educational process that took a year. We had 5 city meetings to explain what these 2 fees were. It's called a fee for service. It's a loophole in the tax law that allows the city council to do this. So they did that, and they did a survey, a park survey, and 1,100 people, 3%. Huge response. Here's where they screwed up. 25,000 of us, we were silenced. Our voices were not heard because we were not allowed to vote on that. 25,000. We have a little over 26,000.
1 minute.
We have a little over 26,000 people in the city of Keizer that are voters. They absolutely have to have a vote on this library issue. And there should never, ever again in our city be a tax added to our utility bills without a vote of the people. I'm asking you, City Council, all this takes is a simple resolution that states you will not add anything in addition to what you've already done. You will not add it to that bill without a vote of the people. I'm asking you as a City Council to fix that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you. My name is
Yeah,
Richard Walsh.
There's a habit.
Thank you. I'm an attorney in town. That's my new title. Actually, I've had it for 30 some odd years. I just want to talk a little bit about the library. I want to just do a little brief what happened before, and I want to congratulate the library, the volunteer library we have, and the proposal that they have. And I got to tell you, if they can propose $125,000 to $250,000 proposal, which doesn't have any additional square footage, doesn't require, a certain number of books per person or per 1,000 people, if they can get that passed by the CCRLS, then things truly have changed. Because we offered way more money than that, and we offered to build, to put it to the citizens for a vote, and it was rejected by the CCRLS. And my understanding was, I don't know who technically made the decision, but the nail in the coffin was the librarians themselves on the panel that was voting in the CCRLS board. Yeah. And so. I just want to say, if that truly has happened, that's great. But I'd say put it in writing and get it nailed down. And if you can, then God bless us all. But to give a little history, the original CCRLS was created by all these different libraries, and a lot of them didn't meet the standards, but they were all grandfathered in, all of them. Kaiser didn't exist then. Kaiser was not a city yet. When Kaiser became a city, they passed a rule that said, okay, from now on, you need to meet what they called in those days the threshold standard. The threshold standard required a building, I think it was like 20,000 square feet for a city our size, and 2 books per 1,000, or I don't know, something like that.
No, two books per person.
Per person, right. So it was a very large collection. And what we thought was that it required a huge stack of books that were research materials, and we saw even 15 years ago that, gosh, those research materials are going to be out of date the minute they get on the shelves. We need to have bigger databases instead. We need to have access to that for our citizens that are right up to date to the minute. We want our citizens to have the Library of Congress at their fingertips, not just the 20,000 books or whatever that you want us to buy. And so we thought it had too many research materials, too much square footage, too many books, quite frankly, not enough bestsellers, but too many research. We thought it had too many employees in terms of employee costs, and that all those things would create a library that would in fact meet the threshold standards, but would be inferior to Salem's library in every single respect. And so if you were to advise somebody and say, what library do you want to go to, or what library should I go to? If your child comes to you and says, what library should I go to? I want to research this, I want to do that. You would be, quite frankly, giving them bad advice if you said go to Kaiser's library as a threshold. You would say, go to the Salem one. It's only a 5 minute longer on the bus, or 15 minutes longer on the bus. So based on that, we came to the idea that we wanted to build a library that was better. Not in every way. We couldn't possibly compete with Salem. We're too close. These standards were based on standalones, like if you're in Burns, Oregon, or if you're somewhere far away from the next library. But we're too close. It's too easy to get to downtown Salem as a general rule. So what can we do? And it's not too close for everybody, and I understand that. And we do want to have a collection for people that just simply can't get to downtown Salem. But what we really would be wonderful is if we were better than Salem in some respects, something that would make people from Salem want to come to our library. And so the idea was that we would go ahead and try to create a library that was superior. That was a concept of the 21st century library. That concept was, and the budget for that was actually larger than the threshold library that they requested. but it was molded in such a way that it would be giving superior services in areas that we decided, like adult education, like the databases that I talked about, like the computers that you can sit at, and the education for the adults so they can learn how to use the computers and the databases, not just in the library, but also at home. And so there was a great needs that we saw in the community, and we wanted to address those and be fantastic at those few items and provide some basic library services for the other things, but not meet these huge standards. So that proposal was rejected. And so all I can say is that whatever the proposal is, and I'm not saying you should follow our plan that we had, follow whatever plan the citizens of Keizer want. Whatever you decide is best. But whatever you decide, whatever this committee decides, whatever all these people decide is best for Keizer, my only advice would be to get it nailed down as best you can in terms of budget, in terms of what you have and what you want in the proposal for the library, and then figure out that budget and get that approved by the CCRLS or whatever the powers are. I don't know how it's all structured now, but get approval for that in writing. And then when that is approved, then you take it to the budget, you figure out your budget, take it to the voters to create this new system that we're gonna have. And if they approve it, that's great.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add something.
We've got a lot of people that really want to
That's
talk.
great. I just want to add, I didn't get to finish to say that these things really matter. When we're talking $4 a month, that's $500,000 of taxes that are imposed.
I know.
600,000 for cops. So when we
We
figure
have
out
some
what
other
our
people who
library
would like to
costs,
talk to us tonight.
that's why we vote on it.
Thank you. Okay. Hands for the next people that want to talk. Daisy.
Hi, I'm Daisy. I'm from Kaiser. And I am speaking as a citizen and as a volunteer at the library. I remember the days that Rich was just talking about. So when I found out that potential for becoming part of CCRLS was real, I was shocked and really pleasantly pleased, or surprised, there we go. And I have every faith and confidence with BJ and John with their previous experience that what they're telling us is true. Those possibilities are real. The numbers are real. The understandings with everybody is real. Maybe I'm naive. I'm super excited, with the public library and having access to those kinds of trainings that they were talking about. I work the desk Monday nights, and we get special needs people in. We get some of our Hispanic population comes in. Our Hispanic or Spanish language books, as well as the cultural books. So we have people writing from that perspective, because a lot of our community, the younger kids, may not speak the language, so a Spanish language book isn't right for them, but they have a certain experience, and to have writers who are able to speak to that experience. We have, my favorite thing is the dual language books for the children. That is so wonderful for the families. When my stepmom came up to the United States, she spoke hardly any English, and my baby brother was growing up in the United States, and so it was something that they were still able to do together. It helped her learn English, and it helped her participate in his education, because that's one of the things that we don't really notice happening. Our parents came up to give us a better life, to have us part of this community, and some of our parents get left behind. And so that's a break in the family that can happen, and having those dual language books is really important. Having access to CCRLS, I know trying to find Spanish language books, I'm usually going to Woodburn, and having access to that means that a lot of our community doesn't have to try and figure out how to get to Woodburn. Yes, I've heard in the past, going to Salem, it's just 5 more minutes. That may be things that we don't have. We have done a lot with volunteer. Before the pandemic, we were open 7 days a week, which was, amazing. And just like with everywhere else, getting volunteers back has been a process. And as people different comfort levels and stuff like that, but I have every confidence we're gonna kind of get back up to that. And I think we're gonna have a library, this proposal is a library in the Kaiser spirit of volunteerism. We have had phenomenal library managers in the past, phenomenal ones. And it's having a paid library manager, there's a difference. You have somebody who's got, that's what their job is. They're not trying to fit this in with their job, with their lives, with their, everything else. And it's a different, this is not saying anything negative about any of the previous managers because, oh my goodness, they have been my lifesaver. But I'm really, really excited for this. And I think it's really, really important. I think it's just a phenomenal opportunity for us.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yes, come on down. And if you just give your name.
My name's Lisa.
Oh, if you just get to the microphone, and that way we can catch it for the folks watching on television. Just your name and your city of residence. Thank you.
My name's Lisa Vasquez. I'm a resident of Keizer and have been for 26 years. I raised my daughter. Had the same story, and I was very appreciative of Councilor Herrera bringing up the fact we all talk about the money and everything else, but the bottom line is there are tons of people in our town that if you don't look, you just keep driving, you're not going to see them, but they're on foot. There have been many times where if I watch too many crime shows, but I see like mothers carrying a child in pouring rain, and everybody just keeps driving. Well, do we have a town or not? You know what I mean? I get that the retail is very important here. I buy everything in Keizer unless I absolutely can't get it here. But I can't go check out a book here. I can go on Amazon. I can now, but it's just frustrating to me that the concept of even bringing up that you're considering a waste of money is just ridiculous. Your job's to do exactly what you've been doing. And I appreciate you, Mayor Clark, because I read about, the things you took advantage of your position and got in a positive way and got the traffic problems and the crummy street corrected and the lines repainted. And then I read on these dumb social media sites, people are complaining because they shut down the lane for half an hour. I think it's great to get public input. I don't think everything you do and you decide on the good of which you've been elected for, the good of our community has to go to a vote. I'm sorry, but people don't get it. They don't get it. I worked in public safety down in California and here in Oregon. They don't get it, but they're the first ones on the phone whining because they don't get the assistance they need. And I just feel I don't want to know what happened 30 years ago and why we did or didn't do something. You got fresh faces here that want to come in and do the research and do the homework and are using their own time to do that, and they deserve a proper audience and not to be baiting people in advance. Oh, it's another $4. Well, I spend more than that on coffee most mornings, but that's my choice. I don't want that to happen. I don't need to go for a vote. You're not asking to put in an arcade. I just don't understand that logic because as a kid, I have my sob story too. I was an Army brat down in California. They didn't have money to go to the movies, but my mom took us to the library and we'd go in there to be all clean and neat. And what that told me is, you could go to college too. Because there was a different environment. It's not like school where you have to do it. You want to be there. And it's just disappointing to me that we've had these conversations again. When 26 years ago, we moved here, we were shocked. There was no library, but we didn't care. We liked the community and we stayed. So anyway, I just want to tell you all, I appreciate your time. I don't appreciate bullying, and I'm not going to name call or anything, but I just don't think it's right. I think like Shani Starr's comment was right on. You got to make sure that, you got a contingency fund and you're not trying to run so lean that the minute you start things, you're realizing you really could have used money for whatever. So I appreciate, anyway, I think the comments I've heard from council, I'm impressed with. And I think you're speaking your mind, but being careful about it. But like I said, I'm just gonna say again, I don't care what happened 30 years ago. And what happened 30 years ago, the library was totally different than it is today. And so anyway, I appreciate your time. And I said I'd be brief, but I think I'm right.
You're still on the green. There you go.
Yeah,
All
okay,
right.
thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? From the back, come on down. Okay, there you go. Thank you so much, and just name, city of residence. Thank you.
My name is Alexis Smith. I live in Keizer. So, homeschool mom. I am one of the ones paying $60 every year to Salem. If just under 2,100 Keizer residents are like me, that's the $125,000 a year. If we're closer to the 9,000 Keizer residents paying $60 a year, that's a whole lot of money leaving Keizer, going into Salem. We need a better library here. I go to Salem, I'm the one walking out with 50 books on a constant basis. It's a good idea to take things to the voters. I support that. However, not everything needs to come to us. This is a common sense thing. And there are multiple solutions, and we're at day one. Well, definitely not day one, but meeting one of many more to come up with some solutions. We have time to do that, but let's not drag this out. Let's do this. This has community support from both sides, guys, both sides. Like, everyone is happy about this. That's pretty cool. I'm really excited to see the community together. Look how packed this room is. That's awesome. Let's get some good things rolling. And this library is beyond overdue. I want to be able to just tell my kid, hey, go pick up our holds. I want to be able to get holds at the Keizer library. That would be awesome. I want to be able to request whatever obscure thing instead of, my kid found graphic novels this week. I've spent over $100 at Target because at least it's in Keizer. So just don't get so caught up in the numbers. Obviously, they're important, but think more it's the community that's utilizing the facility. I think that's incredibly important. And Roland was absolutely correct. It's an investment. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Next. The microphone is open. It is 8 o'clock. I'll take one more if there's somebody who's just chomping at the bit. All right. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you all for coming and listening, and make sure that you share this video with other people so there can be a community-wide conversation. Thank you to our guests tonight for coming and sharing with us your experience and vision. Thank you, Council. This has been a very informative work session. The time is 8 o'clock. Really quick. We're going to, next steps.
I have to say this, as I look out here, I really appreciate folks being engaged. I mean, that's amazing. I wish you could do it in more subjects, but it's okay to be passionate about what you feel. Believe me, that's my life. But I really want you guys to know that we appreciate you guys showing up. That's my saying for 20, 30 years. And I appreciate it. And just looking out here, it makes me feel real good that our community cares. It really does. Thank you very much. Sorry.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming. It's 8:01 now, and we are adjourned.